Hey chaps, so today we're going to be working a little bit more on our editor project. It's not going to be strictly game related, but it's going to be adding some feature richness to it anyway. And that feature is going to be a new map dialog. Now we're going to split this up over a couple episodes. We're going to have the front end work, so the interface and the behaviors of the interface, and then we're going to add the functionality in the next one. So we're going to have a couple of smaller, concise episodes, so it's a little bit easier on the cognitive overload. Okay? Additionally, there is an issue we're going to have to sort out in our project, which I will get to immediately. Okay, so without further ado, I'm going to open up Visual Studio, and here we have our project. Okay, we have our game editor project as the default. Hit start, and here is our editor project. He's behaving exactly as we left him before. We click on him, change the color of the tiles, and we can navigate around. Okay, so it's all working, not a problem. However, if we double click on the Form 1 Designer class, if you followed my instructions so far, it's possible you might see this error. Now this error points to our game editor. MonoGame Editor control has basically just done shit himself. Now, why is that happening? Okay, let's dig into that now. Okay, so if we open up our MonoGame Editor control, right click, view code, there's nothing really wrong in here. And as we saw when we hit the start button, everything's behaving fine. That's because there's nothing wrong with the code, it's just how the designer interprets our code. And I'm not going to go into great detail around how the designer interprets the code, but I can tell you the problem is this chap here, okay? So all we need to really do is remove him and the problem goes away. Because we only use him in the update method, we're just going to define him in the method where we use it, okay? Because there's no real need to have that variable there. If we have a need to store it outside, we can tackle it in a different way, which I'll cover off if and when we get into that stage. So now, if we give this a build, and open up the Form 1 Designer by double clicking on Form 1, you'll see here we have our editor back as usual, which is good. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to introduce a menu strip component, and that will allow us to have some menu buttons which we can create our new map dialog from. Okay. So first of all, we need to make some room for him. And what we're going to do is we're going to click on our MonoGame Editor control here, and we're going to drag him down a little bit so we've got a little bit of breathing room at the top here. The next thing we need to do is open up our toolbox, find under all Windows forms the menu strip here, and then click anywhere in the form itself, and that will give us a menu strip. He will appear in a couple of places. He will appear down the bottom here, and again at the top here where we want him to be. It's easy enough to add buttons to the menu strip. We just click where it says type here, type file in our case, and then there's a sub menu underneath where we'll also type new. And you can see the pattern we're going for here. Okay, so next we're just going to give this a quick start to make sure that's working as intended. And we click file, and there we have him, new. Now if you click on him, he doesn't do anything yet. Although in the background you may have noticed it triggered a click on the map and changed the colour of that tile. So that's something we'll tackle sooner or later. But for now, that's fine. Let's close down the editor. And now let's begin adding some functionality to our button. Okay, so if we hit the file button here, then double click on the new button, that will generate us a click handler for that button here in the Form 1 class. Okay, so he's not doing anything right now. What we want him to do is open up a new dialog for the new map. Okay, so we need to create that dialog. So what we're going to do is on the game editor project, right click on him, add new folder, and we'll create a folder called menus. You can call this whatever you like, but I'm just going to call it menus. Okay, so right click, add new item on the menus folder, and we're going to find in here a form, windows.forms. Okay, so we're just going to rename this guy to new map dialog, enter. And we've got this big obnoxious dialog which we need to start populating with controls. So the first thing we're going to do is going to change how this looks a little bit. So if we click on him, in the bottom right you'll have the properties window, and we're going to change how he looks. So currently he has a maximize and minimize button, and we can resize him, which we don't want to do. So to change that, we're just going to find in here the form border style property. Okay, we're just going to change this to fixed tool window. So immediately it's changed how it looked, and it's removed the minimize and maximize buttons, and we also cannot resize him. So with that said, let's open this dialog from the form. Okay, so we're going to go back to the form1 CS. I'm going to create an instance of that form. So what do we call it? We call it new map dialog. We'll call the instance of it dialog. We don't have the namespace for it, so control period using the game editor.menus or whatever you may have called your folder, and then we're going to create the instance. Okay. The next thing we need to do is show that dialog. So we've created it, but next we need to show it. Okay, and there are two ways of doing that. So if we type dialog dot show, you'll see there is a show and a show dialog. I'll go over the differences with them in a second. So we want to show dialog. Okay, so now if we just hit start and we click the file button and new, we'll have this massive window that we just created. And you can see we can't resize him, we can't minimize or maximize, we can just drag him around. And of course we can close him. Additionally, as I said, you can show or show dialog. What show dialog does is stop us interacting with the background app. Okay, if this was show, we'd still be able to interact with the app in the background. So we'll close that, close the editor. The next thing we need to do is start populating that dialog with some controls. We want it to be able to do stuff. Okay, so what do we want it to do? Well, let's head to the designer. So what we want ideally is a way of specifying the map size and the tile size of the tiles within that map. So they are all based on numbers, of course. So what we need is a control for entering numbers. Now we could use a text box, but there is in the Windows Forms Designer capability a numeric component, which makes life a lot easier for us. So here we have the numeric up down. Let's just drag him in here. And this just restricts our data entry to numbers only. You can allow this to specify floating point numbers, etc., but by default it only allows whole integers, which is perfect for our use case. So we have this here. What we'll do is we'll give him a sensible name in a moment, but first we'll go to the toolbox and drop in a label to describe it. So we'll click label, click in the dialog, and we'll drag him over here. You can see there's some nice guidelines here as well. The purple pinky one just means it's generally in the middle. It's centered, as you can see there. And next we just need to change the value of that label, or the text of that label. So if we click on the label, and in the properties at the bottom right here, if we find text, we can call this, let's call this map width. Now you see he's gone straight into the numeric up down components. We just drag him left a little bit, maybe to about there. And then next let's give the numeric up down component a sensible name, because this is how we will refer to it in code. So if we click on the numeric up down, and then in the properties at the bottom right here, find the name property, which is around here somewhere. There it is. And we'll just call this numeric, just so we know it is a numeric component, map width. Okay? And then we're just going to copy and paste this a couple of times and change the names of the others to match the other components we need. Okay? So we'll get to see that now. Okay, so we've copied and pasted those. The next thing we need to do, as you'll see, we called our first numeric up down numeric map width. The others do not have a name like that, so we need to change the names to match as well, okay? And of course the labels. So we'll do that now. Okay, and there we have our components. So we have these named map width, map height, width, tile height, and of course the numeric components match that as well. So we have numeric map width, map height, tile width, and tile height. Okay, so we have our components to do that now. The next thing we need is a couple of buttons, because we want to be able to say, okay, we've finished entering our data, we then need to hit OK to then create that map, or cancel to close it. Of course, we have this cross up here as well, but it's good to have a button there too. So what we'll do is we'll create a couple of buttons now. So in the toolbox, we'll find button, click on him, click in the form designer, and then we dropped in a button. We'll give these a sensible name as well. So the first button we'll call button OK. Copy and paste him, and we'll have a button for cancel as well. Now, of course, that doesn't change the text of the button, so we need to do that separately. So in the button, we can find the text property. This can be OK. And then here we have cancel. Perfect. So let's align those a little bit more. And then shrink the size of our window. Okay. Let's see how that works then. So let's hit the start button for the editor and then click File, New. And you'll see straight away the dialog has popped over here in the ether. That's not useful to us at all. In fact, for a moment I'd mistaken it for the designer instance, so it's good if we have this over here in the editor. What we can do is we can change this so it appears within the editor and central to the window, which would make that a little bit easier straight away. Okay, so we'll do that first before we forget. As of course the buttons are non-functional, we'll have to click the cross up here. So just click the new map dialog here, and then what we can do is find the start position property and change this to center parent. And what that does is it will center it within the owning form that opens it, which is our main editor window. So if we hit start now, file new, he's there centered. If I close that, move the editor over here, file new, he's still centered. Okay, so that's perfect. Okay, so next let's give the buttons a little bit of functionality first. So the first thing we're going to do is add some functionality to the OK and cancel buttons. So if we double click on OK, that'll create a click handler, much like the file new button we created. And then let's repeat for the cancel button. Double click, and here we have an OK click and a cancel click. The only thing I want these to do for now is both just close the dialog, which you just simply call close. Let's give that a quick run. File new, OK closes, file new, cancel closes. Okay, perfect. So that's all I want them to do for now. We're not going to create any maps, we're not going to do anything like that just yet. We just want to get the behavior of the dialog working. So what next? Okay, so if I open up new, you'll see it highlights the value, or rather the numeric up down component, but not the text within it. So it started here. Okay, if I type, it's just going to start doing this. Ideally, I want it to highlight the text within it, so I can just type straight away, oh, I want this to be 30, or then when I tab, I want this to highlight all that, so I can type it again. So we want it to be able to highlight the values of the numeric up down components as we tab through them. So let's do that next. So the first thing we're going to do is add an event handler to the numeric up down, which is going to be the focus enter event. So if we just click on the numeric up down, click on the events lightning bolt here, and then we'll find focus enter. Okay, so if we double click on him, and then in here, what we need to do is type numeric width, select, and then in here you have two overrides here, or overloads rather. You have a control select and then an up down base select, and this allows you to select the amount of text within the numeric up down. So here we want to select all the values in the numeric up down, so we start at the 0 index, and then we just simply type here numeric map width dot, and this gets a little bit flaky, text, which does not appear in IntelliSense, but I promise you it does exist, dot length. Okay, so now if we hit start again, file new, you'll see straight away it's highlighted the text in there. If I tab through, it doesn't do that for any of the others. So we need to make this code generic for all of the numeric up down components, which we'll do now. Let's give that a close. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is change the name of this, because currently it assumes that it's only going to be on the numeric map width component by the name of the method. So we want to rename that. So we'll right click on him, rename, and we'll just call this numeric up down enter. But of course in here we're also still referring to the numeric map width component, so that needs to change as well. And what we can do is use the sender object. Now the sender object is the object which raises the event, and in our case, because it's coming from a numeric up down, we know it's going to be a numeric up down in the sender. So all we need to do is cast that. So if we just type numeric up down numeric component, I call them components, they're really referred to as controls. I'll just call it control equals numeric up down sender. Okay, and then all we need to do is replace numeric map width with that control. Okay, so let's hit start, hit new, and if I tab, you'll see straight away it's not behaving, it's not doing what we expected, but it is working on the first one. But that's because we haven't assigned that event to the other numeric up downs yet. We've written the code to be generic, but those numeric up downs are not using that event. Okay, so if we just close down the editor again, open up the designer, and then click on the second numeric up down. In fact, let's start the first one and find the name of the method, which is here. copy that, and then move to the second one and just paste that into the enter of each numeric up down. Okay, let's hit start again. File, new, and then you'll see if I tab through them, it's selected all of them. So that means now I can quickly type 10, 20, 30, 40, and it's a really quick, seamless process. The only thing I'd like to add on top of that is if I hit enter, I want that to trigger the OK button, because that just feels like a natural flow of using this interface. So what we're going to do is we'll close this now and close down the editor again. Okay, and there's one last thing we need to add to each numeric up down, okay, and that is the key press event. So starting from the top, we'll click on numeric up down for the map width, and then under the events again, we want to find key press. Let's double click on there. Oh, and whilst I'm here, I just want to make it very clear there are better ways of doing this, but this is still a beneficial thing to know, just in case you want to do this for other buttons as well, but I'll cover the real way of doing this properly in the next video. Okay, and then under numeric map width key press, we want some behavior, and that behavior is if I hit enter, I want to trigger the OK action. Alright, so what do we need to do to achieve that? Well, key press event args passes some information to us to let us know what key has been pressed. So we can work this out relatively easily. So if I type if e.keyCharacter is equals to, and we're going to cast character 13, 13 being the ASCII key code for enter, we can then do some kind of action on the enter button being pressed, or enter key being pressed. So we could have quite easily called the button OK click handler here, but that's generally bad practice to call an event handler from your traditional flow of code. But what we can do is have a shared method that the OK handler uses and this code down here uses as well. So what we'll down over here, we'll have a private void, let's say on OK maybe. For now, that will do. And this will call on OK. This code up here will also call on OK. And then on OK we'll call close. Okay? Okay. All the OKs. Okay, so I probably should stop saying OK. Let's hit start. And then file new. And then within our numeric up down context here, if we type tab, it's all working. And then if I hit enter, it closes the dialog. Let's do that in the fourth one. Enter. Okay, you'll see it's not working for any of them but the first one. And that's the same issue we had with the numeric up down event handling for the highlighting the text. So if we open up the form designer again, all we need to do is start from the first numeric up down, find our key press here, copy that, and then just paste into the key press of the others. Okay. Additionally, of course, this is just the method name indicates it's only been used by numeric map width, but actually it's been used by all the numeric up down components. So we'll give that a quick rename. So if we right click on there, rename, numeric up down key press. And what we'll do is we'll move that above the OK action there, just so it's nestled together with the other event. Let's hit start, file new, and then if we tab through them and hit enter, you'll notice it closes down the dialog and everything is pucker. Okay, cool. So in terms of the actual behavior of the dialog now, I think we're pretty much there, and I think that about covers off for this episode. It's not the cleanest thing in the world, but it is generic in that everything shares the same code. It's not the prettiest thing in the world either, and of course it's named awfully. As you can see, it's got new map dialog up here, but we've got the behavior of the dialog in there ready to interact with and create new maps with. The next steps we need to take, of course, is make this on OK action not just close, but pass back some information so it can then create a new map based on the details we've entered. And that'll be the next step in the next episode, which I will move on to immediately. Okay, so thanks for watching, guys. I'll catch you soon. I appreciate it's not specifically game related, but they are still building blocks towards the editor project that we need to get working. And I hope to speak to you soon.